Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 20 of Nostalgia Talk. We made it all the way to the big 2-0. Holy crap. Hope you're all having a great March break. I'm James, and today on Nostalgia Talk for the big 2-0, I have with me the second ever female guest on the show. Let's give a big Nostalgia Talk hello to Cheryl Blaylock.
Wow, just me and Ivy. What a pair. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, for any of you guys who don't know, Cheryl is a puppeteer and puppet builder as well. She's done multiple work with the Muppets and Sesame Street. A lot of stuff in the 1980s. For example, she played a character named Mona Monster. Various Honkers, like she was in Honker Ducky Dinger Jamboree. And I think, were you in the segment Honk Around the Clock?
Yes.
Okay.
It was, yeah.
And both of those songs, by the way, were written by another past guest on Nostalgia Talk, Chris Surf. And speaking of Chris Surf, I told him that that I was going to be chatting with you, and I'll open up the message that he sent me. Please give my love to Cheryl when you chat with her. She's wonderful. That's coming from Chris Surf.
Oh, Chris, he's wonderful too.
Yeah. And in addition to Sesame Street, Cheryl has also been on Timmy the Tooth, where she performed Bubbles Gum, which also featured some other past guests, Kevin Carlson and Alan Troutman. She also was on Between the Lions, Oobi as Frieda the Foot. She played Fred on Blues Room, which is really where I grew up with her work, because that was from when I was a kid. And also as the title character Eureka on Eureka's Castle.
Yeah, very good. You got the whole resume. Hey.
Yeah, pretty much.
Good reason.
Now, before I begin, I just want to say a little thank you to everyone who passed along very nice birthday messages to me on Monday. I am now 22, and I swear to God, please do not fill my comments with the Taylor Swift song. I've heard that enough that day. Even past guests were reaching out to wish me happy birthday. I heard from Stuart Pankin, Tim Gosley, Mike Peterson, who else? Lewis Henry Mitchell, Paul Rudolph, and an upcoming guest, Ricky Boyd. And I also heard from Joe Matthau as well.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So, Cheryl, welcome to the show again.
I'm so glad to be a part of this illustrious group of people. So nice.
It's great. It's great to have you here. So, how did you get interested in puppetry?
I think it started with watching the Ed Sullivan Show. I'm going to date myself here. Okay, it was way back when the Ed Sullivan Show and Jim Henson's appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show, particularly the character the Glutton.
Oh yeah, the Glutton.
That character, I was rolling on the floor in hysterics, and I just couldn't get enough of it, and I couldn't figure out how he was doing it. And so then every time he made an appearance with another character, you know, my parents would say, "Oh my God, Cheryl, this is Jim Henson with another character." And so I think that was my very first introduction into puppetry that really drew me in, you know. And my high school art teacher had a local show I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So there was a local show that it was called the Channel 3 Clubhouse. And he was the puppeteer on that show. But I didn't know him as a puppeteer. I knew him as an art teacher. I was learning painting and sculpting from him.
Cool.
But he also had a life as an actor and a puppeteer. And he was very cool. He was very bohemian. He had a goatee, and he let us grade ourselves, which I thought, what? Because he would give this whole lecture about self-esteem and what we thought of ourselves and our art. And it's really up to you. Do you dare give yourself an A? Go ahead, you know?
That's amazing.
It was really just opened my mind. And so I really attribute him as my first mentor, I would say. But even when I was really, really tiny, and when we went down and we were on Channel 3 Clubhouse, you know, he would do a thing called squiggle lines, where he would have kids just draw a line on a big piece of paper, and then he would make a character out of it and send you home with it. So I always treasured my squiggle line painting. But I really thought of it as two different people. I mean, he was that guy from Channel 3 Clubhouse and a different guy who I learned art from.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That is absolutely amazing.
It was very cool. And in the summer, he would do like Don Quixote in Lord of La Mancha.
Oh, cool.
Man of La Mancha, sorry. I mean, he was just an amazing guy, and he just. I saw him later after on a visit when I was grown up, and I was pursuing the arts, and I said, "Didn't you ever want to go to Hollywood or New York or Broadway?" And he just said, "You know what? My wife doesn't like big cities, and I felt that I was making an impact here in Southwest Michigan." And he was like a
Wow.
big star in Southwest Michigan, and he was very happy with it. And I was like, and you've taught me another lesson, you know, to be satisfied with your work, you know.
Cool. So what was your first ever professional job as a puppeteer? Was it working with him or was it afterwards?
My first professional job as a puppeteer was
Mhm.
on Sesame Street.
Oh, cool. Do you remember the very first ever thing you ever did for Sesame Street?
Ah, I think I've wiped it out of my memory. It was like, because I was hired as a designer builder,
Okay.
and then I was also taking some acting classes and mime classes. I really felt like it was really important to learn the principles of mime because those principles apply over to puppetry.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, the isolations and the movement and the wrist leads and
Yeah,
all
especially
of
when
those,
you're doing someone's right hand.
yeah, all of those things. Yeah, and doing improvisations where you're building three people building a character, either with a puppet or without a puppet. So all of those principles applied later. But I was hired as a designer builder, and then as I was taking more and more performing classes, just kind of for me, I
Mm-hmm.
thought, I think I really want to do this. Do I dare? Um, so I got together with some students and I made a film where I did a mime piece in it, and I borrowed two puppets from two anythings and made them up because that was my job anyway on Sesame Street.
Okay.
So we did a little thing. It was just a student film, and I played it for Jim Henson, and he started giving me more opportunities. And because there were so few women doing puppeteering at that time, we would get kind of thrown in actually before we were ready, and that kind of happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So usually you'll spend a year or so just doing butterflies coming through the scene or somebody's right hand or a little something, but I was given more opportunity than that, and I was like, oh. So I was working full time for them as a designer builder too, so there wasn't a lot of time to just hone my craft. And I actually very proudly, one of my little pieces of nostalgia that I really cherish is um, a memo that Jim Henson sent around the company introducing Marty Robinson and me um,
Oh.
as the new puppeteers on the block, and that they were going to set up a room for us so that we could practice monitor technique. So he said, please give your support to Marty Robinson and Cheryl Blaylock, our new puppeteers. They're going to be rehearsing in the building, blah, 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 So I was like, oh, so nice. But I still felt terrible about leaving my work, building something that I had to do to take a break to go over across the hall and meet Marty and do our monitor technique. But that was all part of the process.
Marty's a great
Well,
guy and such a great teacher as well.
right. Yeah. And he had had a slew of theatrical experience before that. I mean, he was a well-established puppeteer. It's just that he'd never been on camera before.
Oh,
So he
yeah,
had all of
that's a
that
good
going
point.
right. And I did not. I had not any puppeteering experience at all. going in from the beginning.
Mm.
So yeah, and then one day I was talking to Kathy Mullen. Do you know her?
Yep, she's Moki from Fraggle Rock.
Okay, yeah, and many more. And I said, so how long do you think it took you to really get the monitor down? And how long did it take you before you really felt like you were really comfortable? You know, she goes, oh, about a year and a half, 2 years. I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. You know, I gotta learn this now. So it was really, it was a high learning curve. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well.
So it was just an amazing opportunity.
Well, with what you were talking about with putting together anything Muppets, let me just explain to the listeners what that means. So for characters such as the Count or Mr. Johnson, some of you might not know exactly who I mean by Mr. Johnson, but I mean Grover's customer at Charlie's restaurant who would always say, oh, not you again, instead of, oh, hi, how are you? Just so unpleasant with him because Grover was such a screw up. Yeah, exactly. And so basically those particular puppets are basically like kind of used frequently, like the Count. It's the same puppet for the Amazing Mumford or Biff or Forgetful Jones. And I have a copy of the DVD 40 Years of Sunny Days, which actually features behind the scenes of you transforming Alphabet. Yeah. Alphabet Bates's driver Dominique into Dr. Nobel Price. That was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool that you even know those characters. Yeah.
I didn't even know who Dominique was at the time. I've never seen Dominique on the show. I even asked Brian Neal, do you know who played Dominique? And he's like, no, I don't remember that character.
Yeah, I think she had a French accent.
Okay.
Maybe it wasn't Brian?
No, he was because he was doing Alphabet Bates.
Right. I'll bet it was Jerry or Richard.
Mm.
I bet it was.
I'd love to see Richard pull off a European accent with that female voice that he has.
I'll bet it was. Wow, we'll have to look it up. Dominique. I remember because she had a little beret and yes. I was not up to the task yet. I was still in training, so it might have been me, but it was not. I don't think.
I'd still love to see video of Dominique somewhere. If anybody remembers who played Dominique, leave a comment. Let me know.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you prefer puppet building or performing?
Performing. I
Okay.
haven't built any puppets in a very long time. I was doing, and I guess pre-pandemic, I was doing a kind of a nature show with not a show, but a workshop with kids to get them to appreciate nature and understand the importance of trees and things. So I was building puppets with them out of little pine cones and things. And they were kind of articulated, and the kids would have to do kind of a bunraku style, where they would have to do it would take two people to do the legs and the arms. So
oh yeah.
work as well too. So they're kind of cute. I can send you a video of those. You know, they were improvising some stuff. So it's
I'd love to see
a little nature lesson that I do with kids, and that's the last building that I've been doing. I mean, the new character, Ms. Cherry, was built by Miss Cherry was built by James Whitehall, and I thought about whether I wanted to build again, but I hired him to build her just because I don't really have a workshop anymore. I have a few bits and pieces here and there, but I'd rather concentrate on the other things that I was doing, the puppeteering part and the building of the character, you know, not the actual building of the puppet, but the building of the character, the material, the content, and that aspect of it. So I guess simply put, yes, no, I would prefer puppeteering than puppet building.
And I think I also should mention something I forgot to mention in the intro, which is that character I mentioned, Mona Monster, you built that character as well.
I built her, and I didn't really know that I was going to play her while I was building it. Because do you know how she came about?
I know that it was Telly's sister, and I think it was used in a live show before being used on the actual show.
Right. So she was a character that was added to the live show, an anything character. And
So
Jim,
she didn't even have a name at the time then.
no, she was just a big blue monster, I think. That was part of the live show. And when Jim was looking through the characters, so I hear, I wasn't there, but he really liked that character and he said, let's make a puppet version of her and put her on Sesame Street. And that was, I mean, Jim could make those kind of decisions in those days. It wasn't like somebody, like a writer from Sesame Street had an idea for a character and she's going to be a blue monster. Usually it comes from one of the writers,
Right.
producers on Sesame Street, but in those days, it could be a Jim decision. So, so she became, and then they named, and I get that guess, let's see. So we made the puppet, and it was a Michael Frith design. And I'm not sure how the rest of it came to be, but it all happened around the same time as Fraggle Rock.
Okay.
And I was, so then I was beginning to get ready. So, had more experience under my belt. So Fraggle Rock was coming up and there was these 2 female characters on Fraggle Rock. And I was asked to audition. And it wasn't like a huge audition process. It was just like, go in this back room on the 3rd floor and put yourself on tape doing something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like, a real audition. It was just, a taped version of something. And I think we had maybe a script or something. So I did a little something for Moki and a little something for Red. And then the only other people that I know of who auditioned for it were Kathy and Karen. That's, I think it was between just the 3 of us.
Oh, wow.
Waiting nervously. And then we had another project. We went over to London and we were doing a Polaroid commercial, I think, something like that. So I usually went on trips like that because I did both sides of the lens. I was still kind of in training, so they would have me do a right hand, a background character, and also take care of the puppets, do the puppet wrangling.
Okay.
And so it was there that Jim told me that I did not get Fraggle Rock, which I was heartbroken.
Aw.
And then he waited until like the next day to tell me that I was going to do Mona. And I was like, why couldn't you tell me all at the same time?
I could just see it. I got some good news and some bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? But I'll just wait until the next day.
God, please.
Were you aware at that point that Fraggle Rock was going to be shot in Canada?
I don't think so. I didn't really know. Yeah, I think so. I think it was always planned for Canada.
Okay. Yeah. And now they're doing the Fraggle Rock reboot in Calgary. I'm on the east coast of Canada. I'm in Halifax.
Right. I've always wanted to go to Nova Scotia. I've always been fascinated by that. Maybe one day.
Let me know when.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the character Mona, did you know that character was used as other characters?
The puppet was used as a whole other character.
A couple, actually.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, I'll explain to the listeners, and some of the listeners might recognize one of the characters, especially if you guys are my age. So basically, Mona was Telly's sister with a wild imagination. Telly was at that point played by Brian Neal. This was before Marty was doing Telly. And then after that, there was a song. I think it went something like, "We got a brand new baby. He's gonna..." And Fran Brill was doing the puppet that was Mona, but it was named Frieda. And there was another puppet who was Frieda's mom and then Frieda's baby brother. So Fran Brill was doing Frieda. And then that puppet was used again as Juliet. And she was played by Camille. I hope I'm saying this right. Benora, I believe is how you... Okay. And that was like Telly's best friend, which kind of is interesting considering the fact that that puppet was also used as Telly's sister. And then eventually...
Wasn't she in the Furry Arms or something? A character that was in the hotel there?
Yes. Eventually that puppet turned into Ingrid. And if you're my age, you remember Ingrid and Humphrey. Humphrey, the puppet for the Humphrey song was the mother from... I can't talk today. The Humphrey puppet was originally the mother from the Frieda song. and their daughter, baby Natasha, was the baby from that song as well. And so I knew that puppet best.
Wow.
Ingrid.
You're educating me. I didn't know all this.
Well, I will say, I remember the song "Me Gotta Be Blue," which Chris Surf had written, and which Cookie Monster had sung. And I remember as a kid seeing that puppet there, and I think that segment was in like 82, 83, and I remember watching that as a kid. And my dad was like, "Oh, it's Ingrid." So he was half right. At the time, it would have been Mona.
Right. Yeah. I think her hair changed or something. There was a few things
Oh,
that changed a little bit about the puppet. But you know, it's nice to know that they got a big bang for their buck out of that puppet. I must have built her well because she lasted. You know,
yeah, yeah.
I built her I remember for a small hand. So it would have to be either Camille or a small-handed
Mm.
puppeteer, because if a guy with a giant hand tried to get his hand in there, he probably would break it.
Oh, well, Joey Mazzarino was the one doing Ingrid. So
Oh, okay. So it would have been, yeah, Joey would have been fine.
yeah, he kind of made her sound a little bit like Trilo from Bear in the Big Blue House, that very high falsetto
Oh
type
my
of.
God, that's a hearing house.
Yes, basically like that.
I'm using my puppet voice.
Yeah.
So you were in a couple of my very favorite segments from Sesame Street, most of them before my time, but I've seen them on videos and YouTube. It's a good thing the internet exists.
Yeah.
Um, there's one thing I want to discuss, the segment Family Food. What was it like to work with Richard Dawson?
He was great. He was being his big self, and he walked in, and he I could see the look on his face like, what am I doing here? And you know, and it's okay. I could just see him shift into, okay, I'm going to play along and make the best of this. Okay, puppets, huh? Okay, uh, and um, and he did. He most certainly did, because there was a moment where Marty. Did Marty tell you this story?
Well, he told me that he played the chef in that skit. He said that was one of his very first performances.
It was. It was. I was very proud of him because he came in and he made just. Um, he didn't have any lines. But
Right.
he's so captivated and so upstaged, Mr. Dawson, that he made note of it. He was like, "Okay, and the chef, who's playing the chef?" um, it was very funny because you know, he of all of us, of the whole ensemble, it was Marty who got him.
Mm.
Right.
That sounds like Marty. Was he doing the horse as well?
In Family Food,
Yeah.
uh, I'm not sure. I think we were all given. It was a big ensemble that day.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think
You
even
were.
Ed
You were.
Christie was on that day.
Yeah. Basically, the Hungry family was Brian Neal as Pa Hungry, Kathy Mullen as Ma Hungry, Jerry Nelson was the son, Joey Hungry, who Richard Dawson said to him, "I love that Rod Stewart haircut." You were the middle child, I guess, Janie, and Ed Christie was Baby Hungry.
Maybe, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think his line was, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute," right? I
I think it was just the word milk, actually.
That was it. Milk. That was it.
Yeah.
There
I
was
think.
another bit because we worked together in the shop, Ed and I.
Mhm.
So those lines just kind of rang through the shop for
Yeah.
like weeks.
I remember the wait a minute skit with the monster marching band. Am I right?
Um,
There's a little girl that Frank Oz was doing who was like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute." And that was the start of every sentence.
yes, yes. Okay, yes. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. I
No.
I will say, as I was watching the Richard Dawson skit, when like for example, when he was giving them clues, like what is a healthy main course? Here's a clue. It goes or the second one, what is a vegetable, I think it was, and he says it rhymes with sockily. I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? You're helping them cheat, basically. There's no other word that sounds like sockily. That's not even a friggin' word.
Trying to give it to you.
Yeah. Well, there was another skit from Sesame Street. When I announced this episode on Facebook, I included a link of a somewhat similar Sesame Street segment that you performed in that was about healthy eating. It was the king who ate only chicken.
Okay, was I Katie in that one?
No, that one was Luis was telling a story about king that Jim Henson was playing, who, as the story title suggests, ate only chicken, and Brian Neal was the chef.
Okay.
And so Jim Henson had said, "Is there any other food?" And Brian had that Pepe Le Pew type accent. Not that I know of. And so Jim basically had said, introduce me to another food. Richard Hunt brought broccoli, and the king says, "But it's green and it has no wings." And you came in with whole wheat bread, and Jim's response to that was, "But where are the feathers?" And you explained, "It's baked. It doesn't have any feathers." Marty Robinson came in with milk, and Jim Krupa, I think that was one of the first segments.
Yes.
I think that might have been one of the first segments that Jim Krupa did. He came in with apples.
I have a picture from this piece.
Oh, really? I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the king piece. I'll send it to you with me and Jim Krupa. Okay.
Cool.
Great.
I have a couple of home video. Like, you were never credited on the actual show as a puppeteer, but various home videos did credit you as a puppeteer. And a couple of them contain the segment, "I Don't Want to Live on the Moon." That is my very favorite Sesame Street song. Sorry, Chris Surf, if you're listening. I know that you didn't write it. Well, he told me I'm allowed to like songs that he didn't write, so I'm free. I'm free.
Who did write it?
Jeff Moss.
Oh, Jeff Moss, yeah.
Yeah. Did you perform in the segment for that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I might have.
Well, basically, how I kind of envisioned it, there was a segment that was done. Am I saying this right? Baronku style.
Bunraku.
Okay, I was pretty close.
Yeah.
But basically, Ernie was swimming underwater because the lyrics were, "I'd like to travel under the sea. I could meet all the fish everywhere." So the way I envision it is Jim Henson, he's got his right hand in the head, the left hand in the left hand. Somebody's doing the right hand and another performer's doing the feet.
Yes. Yeah. And didn't we have like a little school of fish going through there too?
Probably. Oh yeah, there was a fish because Ernie was kind of holding it in his hand.
Oh, okay. And I think we did this kind of brilliant little school of fish that Carolee Wilcox built it. And they were built so that they could, it was like a whole school of them. And she did them on a little device where it was kind of like an abacus.
Oh.
And they could switch which way, how fish like go like that. So the whole
Yeah.
school would turn at the same time.
Kind of like in the segment 7 Goldfish that was done for Sesame Street.
It could have been on that. I remember that in the shop. I remember that.
Okay. It might have been for "I Don't Want to Live on the Moon" then, because you were credited in the video "The Best of Ernie and Bert," which featured that.
Oh, okay.
And actually, believe it or not, once I had heard from you about doing this show, I went back and started watching some of the old Sesame Street VHS tapes, and including "Best of Ernie and Bert." And I thought to myself, man, there are so many segments in here, well, from Sesame Street, that are missing from this tape featuring Bert and Ernie. Like, it didn't have Rubber Ducky doing the pigeon,
Wow.
the clay sculpture of Bert, where he puts Bert's nose on him.
Everything. Have you seen like everything?
Probably. There's some things I'd like to see. I'll give you that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did this little video where I talked a little bit about some Bert and Ernie segments that I really liked that could have been in that videotape. And if anyone's interested, I'll put a link in the corner of the video if you haven't seen it before and would like to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So you seem to have worked on a lot of segments with Jim Henson. Can you talk a little bit about what he was like?
Jim, yes. Jim was a very generous performer. He loved being upstaged. And Brian Meal was very good at that.
At upstaging?
I was a little afraid. I mean, Brian would, I remember we were doing, you can see a little bit of it. It's in that 40th anniversary special.
Oh yeah, on the set of
Honker Ducky Dinger Jamboree. That
That's
piece.
so hard to say now.
Honker Ducky Dinger Jamboree. That
I love
dinger
that
is
song.
not easy to make too. We had to figure out how we were going to do the dinger on the head. So no, we were as we were dancing around at the end. Brian came around from one side and went straight up into the camera and then off. And then he came around from another side. And I turned to Jim and he was laughing. He was loving it. So I was like, okay. So yeah, there were times that I thought, here's a little anecdote. There was one time we were trying to figure out, with all the directors were putting their heads together about how to get a shot, and they wanted to have something that was going to pop down and hit a mark exactly.
Okay.
And they kind of like, I don't know how we're going to do it. And then Jim said, well, why don't we just reverse the tape? And everybody went, oh, like little light bulbs went off over everybody's heads. And I realized too that I was looking at some very old footage from some of the early commercials that Jim made. The Wilkins and
Wilkins Coffee, yes.
coffee. And there was one that I was like, oh my God, he reversed the tape. So that moment on Sesame Street was nothing new for him. It wasn't an aha out of the blue. It was something he had done before, all the way back to Wilkins Coffee.
Wow.
Yeah, he innovated. He really invented television puppetry.
Mm.
It was a whole new art form that he wanted a part of, whether it was puppetry or not. There was lots of other directions that he went before he really settled on the puppetry.
Wow. Yeah. Jim and Frank are both my idols, basically, as performers and as filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Them and Walt Disney as well.
Well, yeah.
Mm. Mm.
I
So
thought- Mhm.
So you also were talking a little bit about Carolee Wilcox, and I'd heard a little bit about her not too long ago from Lewis Henry Mitchell when he was a guest on here. And just for the listeners who missed that show, Carolee Wilcox passed away not too long ago. Do you have any Carolee Wilcox stories that you'd like to share?
Carolee Wilcox. She's the one who hired me.
Lovely.
She's the one who hired me, and I deeply grateful. She changed my life, And there was no good reason for her to hire me, because I was really busy making costumes, and I was making these big sort of headpieces for a new musical that was very exciting. It was at the First All Children's Theater, the Merry Mini Players, and I was very, very busy with it. But that I had met someone who was actually a production assistant on Sesame Street, and she used to come in every Saturday and help me dress the kids. This was an all children's theater. It was done by children.
Okay.
And I was the costume builder, the costume designer, and I was building these big headpieces that were something totally new for me too. Kind of like Mardi Gras headpieces, big giant things.
Wow.
And so I asked her if she could introduce me to Sesame Street, and she got me this contact with Carolee. So I went in, and it was a really good time for Henson. It was called Henson Associates at the time.
Or Ha, I think.
Ha, and then there was hi, him, he, who, ho, hum. and then
It was just like, it was basically abbreviations.
Yeah, and there was stationery to go with each one. There was a memo pad for each one. I had the ha, and then everybody who worked in each division had those memo pads. Anyway, then they finally put them all together into Jim Henson Productions. But anyway, Carolee hired me, and which meant that I was going to work full time during the day for them. For the first project was Sesame Street, and then I would go over to the theater at night and try to finish that project. So for the first 6 weeks, working for Henson Associates, I was working constantly with just a few hours of sleep every night.
Oh,
And
yikes.
it was insane, but I had to do it because both projects were just had to do it. I had to say yes. Had to say yes to both. So, so I told my boyfriend at the time, I'm like, yeah, I won't see you for about 6, 7 weeks. He goes, yeah, right. You have to eat, don't you? You got to take a break to eat. And I was like, yeah, but well, maybe not because I can eat while I'm working. You know, you got to say yes to it all.
I know exactly how that feels. We were doing a student film once for school, and our call it was a 2-day shoot, weekend shoot. Our call time on the first day, which was Saturday, November the 2nd of 2019, our call time was 4:30 in the morning.
Oh,
And so we were there until I think 7 o'clock at night. Our call time the next day was in the afternoon, so I got more time to sleep. And we were done at 1 in the morning.
oh boy.
It was
Yeah.
the hardest we had ever worked before on a project. I usually am always very anxious to be out that late at night, but we didn't really have much of a choice. We had a lot of shots to do that were in at night, and at that point it was early November, so at that point it was, daylight savings time pretty
Right.
well.
Yeah. And you'll find that's very common in the film industry, you know. I mean, I worked for a couple of days on a film where my call time was an odd time like that, and then they were serving dinner at like breakfast time,
Oh,
and because their whole schedule was so off that I was like, "What's going on? What kind of twilight zone am I in
yeah.
here?"
We
Because I
had our dinner at like 11:45 at night. It was an hour long, so we actually got to watch the day move into the next day.
right? Yeah, yeah, I know. You just go into time twilight zone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Mm,
nature of the beast.
mm. So when you work on Sesame Street TV specials, such as Big Bird in China or Don't Eat the Pictures, which is one of my favorites, I have a VHS copy of it here. Um, are you actually like on location with them, or are you just working in the shop for the most part?
Don't Eat the Pictures was with the Met special.
Yes, where they
Yeah.
were at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Yeah, yes. Big Bird in China, I was in the shop, and Carol Lee was slated to go to China
Oh, wow.
with the production. And then she asked me also to get a visa because I was an alternate to go if she couldn't go. I was like,
Okay.
oh, so close. So I had a visa to go to China, but I never went.
Oh,
Um, so I just built and prepared everything to put it in the boxes and ship to China
okay.
on that one. Big Bird at the Met, Don't Eat the Pictures. I was mostly, what was happening during that time? I was in the shop and I started, I started doing TV commercials.
Oh, wow.
That time I had an agent, and it was just kind of this all happened out of an acting class. Casting director came into my acting class and she called me in for an audition and I booked it.
Ooh.
And then she got excited and she referred me to an agent and I'm like, hold up, I'm working full time for the Muppets. I don't know if I had time for this. She looks at me like, you've got an acting career. You have to do this. And I'm like, well, I can do the bookings. I can take time off for the bookings, but I don't have time for the auditions. And then, so I was, then I was trying to fit it in. I was trying to like make a little extra time on lunches so that I could run to a couple auditions, come back to the workshop, build the puppets. I was trying to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked not to be on the set at the Met because I would not have been able to leave.
Oh.
I would not have been able to say to my agent, yes, I can make this audition. So it was just pure luck that I was starting because, when you start out, word gets out and they want to try out the new kid and then you end up booking some things. So they were mostly animation because I was doing the cartoon characters, the puppet characters. So that kind of became my reputation. So I think the first one I did was a little spider character.
Oh my God.
Commercial. So that's what was happening during that time on the Met piece.
Mm.
Yeah, but I was hearing lots of rumors and things of what was happening during the production of that. It was not an easy shoot.
I heard the same with Big Bird in China.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, that was because of all of the international stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and
Did you?
also the Met was we had to be they had to be very very careful about where they were putting all the production equipment and the timing of it and everything. And yeah, and I heard there was a little problem with the young cast member too, the boy.
The prince in that?
Yes, yes.
Marty Robinson told me that it was very difficult for that kid because basically he was inside of Snuffy, and so he found it very hard to have to basically carry that kid as Snuffy. I think his
Um,
name I think his name was Aram Chowdhury. I don't know how to pronounce it, but eventually I found out that a couple of years after doing Don't Eat the Pictures, Aram I'll just refer to him by his first name. Aram died in a car accident.
no.
Hmm.
Oh, I never heard that.
Yeah. Well, when I told Marty, I don't think he knew it either. So, but
Wow.
yeah, and there's a foundation apparently online for him.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Mm.
Wow. So I'm glad that he's on camera, or that movie.
Yeah. Well, it's just really chilling to watch him that young and then knowing that. And especially because Don't Eat the Pictures takes a real dark turn with Sesame Street if you really think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I really loved it. I just love when Sesame Street like goes on location like that because it's you never really get to see it that much. So it's kind of neat. Did you happen to see the Big Bird's road trip segments that they did? This was in season 50.
No,
Okay.
no.
They were pretty cool.
Great.
And actually, going back to the topic of Big Bird in China, did you happen to see the Carol Spinney documentary?
Yes.
What did you think?
So great. It was really lovely to have that, to have his life memorialized like that. Yeah.
Mm. I remember my dad had told me that he had downloaded it, and he's like, "You want to watch it?" And I was like, "Sure." I don't have school tomorrow. I was 16 at the time,
Mhm.
and man, my eyes were streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
So,
devoted I mean, can you imagine an entire career basically made up of playing two characters?
Big Bird
Their
and Oscar.
entire career. Yeah.
Yeah, I from time to time I post what's called nostalgia talk bonus, meaning that maybe I'll showcase like a toy or a VHS tape or a CD that I have.
Yeah. You did one that was all about Carol Spinney.
Yes, I did. I did a little clip show of Carol with stories featuring that were told to me by Kevin Carlson, Joe Matthew, and Ivy Austin,
Oh, great.
and actually, I've got one coming up next week, actually, that I'm teasing now. Kind of like a sequel to the last show that I just did featuring Tom Spawn. So stay tuned because it'll be out on March the 27th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Carol Spinney loved Christmas, and his house is filled with Christmas. It's like always Christmas.
That's lovely. And
Yeah,
especially because his birthday is the day after is the day after Christmas.
that's right. So
Mm,
it's happy birthday and Merry Christmas at the same time.
it's lovely. So
Yeah.
moving on a little bit from the Muppets,
Okay.
let's talk about a project that is not Muppet related that you are most well known for, and I just started watching it this last week to get ready for this. Eureka's Castle, where you got to do the title character Eureka.
Yes. How are you watching it?
I found it on YouTube,
Did you?
hmm and
Wow.
and
Like
I
a whole
love it.
episode?
Huh?
They have whole episodes?
Just a few.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know it was available because people ask me, are they going to have a DVD release? I mean, you can still get VHSs if you can find them, I guess.
I'll have to check
But,
Value Village.
yeah, and I think the specials that we did a Halloween special and a Christmas special.
Oh, cool.
Those VHSs I think are a little bit more available. But
Mm,
I might have one of those.
mm.
But yeah.
So how did you get the role of Eureka's Castle? Because there were a lot of Sesame Street cast members in it. Some that we were talking about: Jim Krupa, Brian Neal, a couple
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, it was like old home week when we got together. Yeah, that was a real audition process, where you go in and there's somebody behind the camera, there's a casting person, and you put on. I don't remember it very specifically. It's funny, people ask me about auditions, and you remember the really horrible ones, and sometimes not any of them at all, because we're so trained. We audition so much that I think in order for a performer to survive mentally, you have to wipe it out of your memory. So it's like people ask me about auditions, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you hear. So it's on tape somewhere if somebody kept it. So
What,
just
your audition?
I don't know. I mean, all auditions are.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So,
That's a good point.
so it's like, oh no, please destroy the tape. So how did it come about? It was just Nickelodeon. A lot of times it happens from the people who are building the puppets.
Mhm.
So it was Jim Krupa's company, 3 Design Studio. They made the puppets, and then they suggested a list of puppeteers to audition. That's how it happened. That's my answer.
So was Jim Krupa like puppet captain for it?
Yes.
Okay. And for the listeners who haven't watched Eureka's Castle, I'll put a link in the corner for that as well if you're interested in checking that out. I just got into it. And I love it. I am loving it.
Good. I
Mhm.
think I'm most proud of the specials. There was one special we did with Luther Vandross.
Oh, cool.
That's my fave. I
Nice.
think I have a piece of that on my YouTube page of the conversation because he played the Grand Wizard.
Okay. I'll put your YouTube page in the description below.
Okay. So and actually just recently Jim Krupa gave me the actual phone that has a crystal ball on it. So I'm it's got a little push button thing with a crystal ball in it. I have it on my desk
Oh, cool.
next to my real phone. But it was like, so she's so excited. Eureka is calling the Grand Wizard, and he answers, and I was like, oh my God, the Grand Wizard.
Oh, I think that's one of the episodes that I watched to get ready for this.
Okay.
Was
Yeah.
it the one where Magellan was singing "Don't touch that box or Eureka's gonna yell at you," something like that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I watched that one to get ready.
That's the one. Don't touch this box. I think that's the title of it.
Yes, it
Right?
is.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I just remember it as the Luther Vandross special.
That's a great way to remember it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then we did one for Halloween. So there was 3 specials. There was that one, the Halloween special, and who joined us for that one was Joey Mazzarino.
Oh, cool.
It was like one of the first things he was. I think Jim Krupa kind of discovered him because I remember him bringing in. He says, "I'm bringing in this really great new puppeteer. He's brand new." It was little Joey Mazzarino.
Well, I had always heard from
Yeah,
Joey
Mark.
I had heard from Joey Mazzarino. I mean, I had heard him talk about it. I've never really had any contact with him, but the way he explained it was that he didn't even know that puppeteering was a job.
Right.
Like something funny that he had mentioned was that when he saw The Empire Strikes Back and he sees Frank Oz as Yoda, he's like, "Wow, that Frank Oz must be so little. How did he get in the costume?"
How did he get in there?
Yeah. Unless it's in the case of like Big Bird, Snuffleupagus, Sam the Robot.
It's crazy what kids imagine, because there was one time on Eureka when we had this, we had an insistent mother who she really, really, she kept asking and asking and asking if she could bring her daughter in to visit Eureka's castle. She could bring her into the set. And we were like, well, we don't really it's not really an open set. We don't really have visitors, and then she's so pleaded because her daughter was just so in love with the show.
I don't blame her.
So the producers finally relented, and so it was like they're going to bring her in today, so we were all prepared. they opened the door and she looks at the set and she instantly turned around and buried her face in her father's chest.
Aw. Aw.
And I thought, what did they allow this child to dream up in her mind? What did she think she was going to see? You know? And her brother was like, oh man, this is cool. He was all into it, you know?
Oh.
But I think she dreamed up that she was going to be in like Disneyland.
Oh.
It's going to be, it's a small world after all, you know? But here we are, you know, and there's the set that's built up here and all the lights and sound equipment and us real people under the puppets, and she just couldn't handle it. So
Yikes.
and I'm like, see, this is why we don't have tours.
Well, even as a young child, like at maybe 1 or 2, I knew that that nothing moved their mouths the way that humans don't. Like I knew that Elmo was not a person because I was like, why? Because I would look at the way that my parents were talking, and I was like, why isn't Elmo or Grover's mouth moving the way that my mom or my dad does? And the same with Disney. I'm a Disney kid, and I thought to myself, no human being has black outlines around them. I do remember one time having this bizarre vision of me going into the TV while watching Winnie the Pooh. I don't remember how I dreamed that up, but I was watching Winnie the Pooh, and I'm on the TV with Tigger, so I'm meeting Tigger, which ended up happening about 16 years later. I got to meet the voice actor for Tigger in Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, great! How fun!
Yeah. Jim Cummings is his real name.
Jim Cummings. Okay.
Yeah, he was funny. He was really funny. We met in LA. I went to LA for this Disney fan conference, and Peter Linz was there. I got to meet Peter.
Yay! Are you going to interview him?
I have not yet. I'd like to. Peter, if you are listening, I'd love to chat with you on Nostalgia Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter and I met at that Disney convention. He was walking around. I told Chris Surf this story when I interviewed him, but he was walking around the main hall, and I looked at my mom and I was like, Mom, that's Peter Linz. He's one of the Muppet guys. My mom was like, how do you know that? And I knew him before. We had emailed, and so I went up to him and I was like, excuse me, are you Peter Linz? And he said, I am. And I said, hi, I'm James Nobes. And he says, oh, nice to meet you. His mouth dropped because he realizes who he's talking to. He's like, wow, the James Nobes from Nova Scotia. So that's basically his nickname for me, and also my Instagram name, the James Nobes.
Hey, and mine's the Cheryl Blaylock.
Ah, very, very, very clever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all you posers out there, stop faking.
I don't know how. I think because there was another Cheryl Blaylock.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're the only one that I know of. And speaking of, sorry.
Glad you found me.
And speaking of Peter Linz and Chris Surf, you performed various characters in a show that I grew up from when I was a kid that Chris had co-created and Peter had co-starred in, Between the Lions. What do you remember what you did for that?
What a great show.
Oh yeah.
I did actually some building. I went back to build a few things, costumes mostly for the characters with Redesign Studio.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then I auditioned for it.
Oh.
Thank God I didn't get cast because the Cleo puppet was so heavy.
Oh.
I just knowing how heavy that puppet was, I watched Jen in awe. And then I was adding more heavy costumes on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh God bless her. I hope she can do this, because I don't think I could have sustained it. You really had to be a monster strong puppeteer, and Jen is. And let's see. So I did some building, and I did some every once in a while I got a character, a monkey. I had some little monkey characters.
Oh, I remember those things.
Yeah. So I was an extra puppeteer.
Okay. When I landed Chris Surf on Nostalgia Talk, what I did to get ready was I hadn't watched Between the Lions in years, so I went back and started rewatching it. And the second I hear the theme song, hey now, dun, dun, dun,
Mhm.
hey wow, here's how, I was starting to come back to me because again, it had been a long, long time. And then it gets all upbeat. Between the lions, between the covers of a book, it's time to look between the lions. Yeah. And all
Yeah.
of these puppets were starting to come back to me, and I just started bawling my eyes out. I was like, oh my God, I just had this big nostalgic ugly cry. Thank God nobody else saw it.
You know who would love to hear this is the songwriting partnership of Sarah Durkee and Paul Jacobs. They
Uh,
did a lot of the music, and I proudly introduced them to Chris Surf, and it's been a great partnership.
wow. Yeah, Chris described Paul as one of Sesame Street's great arrangers.
Yeah.
So another retro project for me that you were a part of, one that I did, another one that I grew up with, Blues Room. I was a Blues Clues kid back in the day, so I watched Blues Room, and you were Frederica or Fred, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I watched the first episode until later, but I remember they were calling that character Fred, and not to sound like a sexist, but I thought that was very bizarre.
Yeah, short for Frederica.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Wow. I call her Frederica the birthday freak.
Okay, yeah, now that's coming back to me. I remember her being obsessed with birthdays.
Yes, she was obsessed with birthday. Um, I still
She
have
should have been here on Monday.
yeah, for your birthday. It's your birthday. Yeah, and there's a couple of little dolls that have her voice. You press the belly, and it says 6 different expressions that I did for the dolls. They're really fun. Talking Fredericas. Um, so yeah, I didn't know until the whole episode was over. I mean, the whole season was over that she was named for Fred um, Fred Rogers. Sorry,
Oh, wow.
she was named after Fred Rogers.
Oh my
It was
God.
supposed to be a tribute to him, and nobody ever told me, you know,
That's
because the
lovely.
writers had grown up and they were really just great admirers of Mr. Rogers and his show and his philosophy, and that was kind of their philosophy going forward with how they wanted to connect directly with children on the other side of the frame, you know, which we tried on Eureka's Castle. I remember when they wanted Eureka to do some pieces that were directly to the camera, and we just hadn't done that kind of thing before. And it felt really awkward, almost like a commercial announcery kind of a. It was really awkward to take us out, to break the fourth wall.
Mm-hmm.
But on Blues Clues, they really mastered the art of that, of connecting with the person on the other side of the frame. And they tested it out to see if kids really did answer, and I actually went with them to a children's center one time. I said, I really want to see this in action, you know. And sure enough, they would leave enough time and ask the right questions that would be that would inspire an answer, you know. So so that's when I just got a whole different update on that kind of entertainment, and then talking directly to the camera. Um, and Frederica was just kind of silly fun, it was really a lovely character to play.
Mm. Is
Yeah.
that one that you auditioned for?
That audition process was interesting. That I do remember because they auditioned us by coming in and doing improvisations, and actually the 2 people auditioning were like behind. It was like in a recording studio, so they were behind the glass. They weren't even in the same room, and we just improved and did a bunch of stuff, and then we got the notice that we were cast, but we weren't cast in a specific character. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay. So you're choosing a company of people, and then you're going to assign the characters. Hmm. Okay. Kind of like a rep company.
Mm-hmm.
So then they had us come in to do a kind of a table read with all of the drawings of the characters stretched out across the table, and we would just try different voices for those characters. So they
Okay.
didn't have any puppet mock-ups or anything like that. So they knew our puppetry skills, and we were just going to try out voices for all these different things. And the meeting that I went to was meant to be everybody in the same room and just kind of playing around with voices with the whole company. But everyone was so busy that the only people who showed up were me and Peter Linz.
Oh, wow.
So it was just me and Peter Linz playing with voices and, picking up a drawing and going, oh, Frederica. I know a little girl named Frederica. And this is for real. I know a little girl named Frederica
Oh, really?
who lives in France, and her mother is American, her father is French. And when she talks to me, she talks a little bit like this, And she used to follow me around and say, you should wear your hair like that. You look pretty like that. So that became her voice. It was from the real Frederica.
Wow.
So that's the voice that I thought of for Frederica. And then I did another voice for Silly Seat. And they did cast me in Silly Seat. Now, here's where it's like, you're not trying on the puppet in the audition process. You're showing up on the set and saying, okay, where's the puppet? And say, oh, Silly Seat's over there. I'm like, you mean that couch? You mean that? Do you know how much I weigh? How much does that weigh? How do I get into it? Oh my God. It's built. Oh my God. They strapped me into this thing that's built on a backpack. And it was a giant, like a mini couch, with movable arms. And I'm like, okay, God help me, I'm going to do this. There was actually one scene where I played Frederica sitting in Silly Seat
Oh,
and
wow.
Silly Seat as well, dancing to a song.
Oh, cool.
Thank God Almighty, we got it in one shot. And I remember Matt Vogel was with us that day. And every time I turned around, he would go in and do the arms and do up and down while I was doing Frederica. And then I would twirl around again. He would come out, and I would twirl around again. He would come back in. It was quite a feat to do that song.
I
And then
bet.
the following season, we came back, and one of the producers took me aside, and she said, "Oh, well, I have some news for you." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm getting fired." And she goes, "Well, they picked me to tell you that because she loved Silly Seat, she just loved that character, and in the meantime, they had decided to write out the character." And I was like, "Oh, thank God, thank you, thank you, thank you." Frederica is perfect. Frederica is enough. I'm happy. I don't need to play any other characters. So thank you. Thank you. But I do wish I had that on tape, just that one song, because that was quite a memory of getting that down. I just thought it was going to be such torture. And thank God we got it in one take.
So another project that you worked on that I mentioned in the intro, and you were talking about little difficult puppeteering kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
You got to do Frieda the Foot in Oobi, and that one was a little bit different than most of these puppet projects I've been talking about, because for that one, for anyone who hasn't ever watched Oobi, basically for like Sesame Street, the people like Cheryl and Marty Robinson and bunch of other people I've talked with and I'm good friends with, they actually have a piece of cloth on their hand. For Oobi, they were using their human hands, but they were like eyeballs on the human hands to kind of make it look like the hands were the people basically. And so Cheryl, you were doing Frieda the Foot. Did you find that more challenging?
Very, very.
Also,
I just loved the whole genesis of that show because Josh Selig, who is another genius, he was writing, I think, for Sesame Street at the time. I'm not sure how this evolved time-wise, but he apparently had come into one of our puppet trainings, which was, we just have bare hands with eyeballs, a couple of ping pong balls, and we learn eye focus. You go to the corner, this corner, that corner, just so you can kind of orient your brain. It's just puppetry 101. Puppetry 101. Bare hand, couple of ping pong balls. And he was watching this session and he got inspired to write a show using that technique, which I think is just, it's pure puppetry, purest puppetry.
And very realistic looking too.
Yeah. And the illusion that you can create, especially when you're doing something with your hand, and then sometimes Oobi would actually point to something, and we bought it. It was, it's a hand and it's a character, but it's pointing to something.
Right.
And, and I just thought they came up with really genius stuff. And then Tyler Bunch putting the things here.
And he scrunched his hand a little bit too.
Yeah, like that, so it looked like an older character. So I just thought that was really so brilliant. So then Josh calls me and he asked me if I'd like to do this foot character. And I'm like, sure. And I'm like, wait a second, my barefoot? It's going to be my barefoot. Okay, so now I got to like really spruce up my foot to make it look, camera ready. I mean, people don't have very pretty feet, So, so I think I got it into a way that I would be willing to put it on camera. But then I was like, Josh, I think I'm going to need like an hour at least, an hour or so, as much time as you can give me on set so that I can train my foot. I got to take my foot back to Puppetry 101 because we're starting from scratch here, I'm like, and where are the eyes going to be? And it was like, yeah, we're going to put the eyes on the bottom of your foot. So I'm like, okay, so I have pictures of us, scrunched behind the set. So I do have pictures of this if you want. I can send you
Sure.
pics. Not Oobi. Yeah, so and Josh was there and he said, yeah, I'm glad we gave you this extra time, because because not only did I have to get my eye focus down on my foot, but I had to kick a ball too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were playing kickball and I had to like hit a real target and hit it just right to have it roll just right over here. So that was fun. Everybody was very supportive. And then my favorite part was coming back because then Noel played her brother, I think. And we played dress up and we popped down and put shoes on. Shoes. I thought that was brilliant. So yeah, that was it. And we were trying to get Oobi to play shoes with us. To play dress up.
I have seen a little bit of Oobi here and there. I will say I do like the relationship between Oobi and Grandpoo because I'm very close with my grandfather as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also have a little nickname for him ever since I've known how to talk. And some of the regular listeners probably know this, but ever since I've known how to talk, I've called my grandfather Grumpy.
Really?
It started out
Grumpy?
Well, it started out Gumpy.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like I don't know where that came from, but being a Disney kid, he had a doll of Grumpy from the Seven Dwarfs that was about probably the size of my body, and I think me or my father kind of saw it, and we were referring to Gumpy, and then I think one of us said Grumpy, and here we are, 22 years, it's stuck.
You still call him Grumpy?
Yeah, to this day, I still call him Grumpy.
So it has nothing to do with his grumpiness.
Maybe. Yeah, like there are days when I'll be with him and I'm like, hey, how are you? He's like, grumpy and proud of it.
Okay. Living up to the name.
Yeah. So another series that you did, another one I just recently got into, The Adventures of Timmy the Tooth, which was co-created by my good friend Kevin Carlson. And I actually, not too long ago, this was just right before I decided to start Nostalgia Talk, but I was at Value Village and I saw a Timmy the Tooth VHS tape. So I bought it and watched it and I really enjoyed it. It's the only Timmy the Tooth thing I have. And then the next month I said to Kevin, hey, do you want to be on this podcast I'm doing. So he was the second guest that I had come on the show, which was nice.
I gotta listen to it.
Yeah, so I watched a little bit of, well, as much as I could of Timmy the Tooth to get ready. So you were the character Bubbles Gum, and you live in New York now. Kevin and Alan and most of the puppeteers who were on that show are in LA. Were you living in LA at the time?
I was based in LA at that time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was, I've always had my home base New York,
Mm-hmm.
but I would go to LA for like 6 months. I think that during that time I was there for 2 years. That was the longest time I was there.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
So there was a home video that Kevin and I were talking about, Muppet Classic Theater that you were in.
Yes, I was in that too. Yeah, that was during the time I was living there. Yeah.
What did you do in that?
Various characters. I think I did a bunch of nameless characters.
Like villagers?
Yeah, yeah.
I did a whole, I basically started monologuing Muppet Classic Theater with Kevin. Like I did the whole, you got to do something, we pay our taxes kind of thing, from the, what was it? The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And Kevin looked at me, he's like, you're good.
Was Kevin on that too? Was Kevin and Alan on that?
He was, yeah. Alan had a lot more speaking roles than Kevin did. Like Alan did Papa Pig, which was the father of the 3 pigs.
Yeah.
And I think he did a couple of characters in King Midas, and a banker.
Alan, I'll tell you a little story about Alan. Alan and I go back to, God, I started going out to LA like 6 months for pilot season.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to go out to LA about every 6 months or so. And I met Alan and Bruce Lanoil doing a project for the Peppercorn Players, I remember. So I went out to on one of my many trips to LA. I worked with Bruce and Alan with the Peppercorn Players, and they were really wonderful kind of sculpted foam puppets, and we did several projects with them. And so when I came back to New York and they were asking me about, I think it was Jim was asking me who I knew in California. I mentioned Alan and Bruce.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I recommended those 2 very highly. And and we did a show also called the Lou Kelly Show.
Oh wow!
And Alan did his famous Walter. What's the character he does so well?
Oh wow!
Walter,
I don't know if that's something we talked about.
Oh, he can draw that character up so quickly. Walter Matthau.
Oh, the actor Walter Matthau.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
for a minute, I thought you were talking about a very famous character that he does that perhaps I wasn't aware of.
No, he did a character on that show with the Walter Matthau voice.
Okay.
And I did my Judy Holliday voice. So we were talking about Timmy the Tooth.
Yeah, Timmy the Tooth.
Yeah. So yeah, that was also a little bit like old home week because Bruce and Alan were on that show too.
Right.
And I think that was the first time I met Kevin. I think. And James and Christine Papalexis. It's great.
It is a very cute show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was the first time that I worked with puppets that had remote control eyes.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there was another person on the. Christine did Bubbles Gum's eyes, and it was such a nice. Again, referring back to that mime piece where you're creating one character, 2 people are creating one character, or even that simple exercise where 2 people are sitting together and one person puts their arms behind the other person and the other person is doing, one person in the front is speaking and the person behind is doing the hand gestures.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a really great exercise in creating one character together too, and getting your instincts to be in sync. And Christine was very much in sync with me on her. She got every eye move, and it was just such a pleasure to to trust that that was going on. She was always looking in the right place. She was always blinking at the right time. And it really just created such a wonderful character.
Nice.
All those puppets were fun.
Mm. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about your work with Trees New York?
Trees New York.
I know that that's not really puppet based,
Yeah,
but it's
I
it's
tried to make it so, though.
yeah, I saw a little video of you talking about your work with it, and I was really fascinated by it.
Where I was, it was an interview on the sidewalk, right?
Yes, it was on
Yeah,
Vimeo.
on Vimeo. Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. So it was a total out of the blue thing, where it came out of a volunteer thing that I was doing. I mean, I just got into gardening, and I took this course called the Citizen Pruner course that was given at Trees New York.
Hmm.
And I was so inspired. It was just a whole new subject for me. And I was just really into environmental studies. And so I asked my teacher if there was any room for somebody with my crazy background in your organization. And so we talked about it, and I freelanced for a little bit, and I created some programs for kids, and tried to use the element of puppetry in that. The only puppet that I owned at the time, so sorry, I lost the puppet. But it was a puppet that I got at a ventriloquist convention in the 80s with my boyfriend, who was a ventriloquist. And I went with him to this crazy convention of ventriloquists. Oh my but there was a woman who was selling these puppets, and they were soft, muppety kind of puppets, but they were vent dummies.
Hmm.
And he bought this puppet for me, so I had this puppet, and I just kind of I didn't take her out very often, but I thought, you know what, I could do a character. How about she's Mrs. Crabapple, and she hates trees.
Oh.
Crabby little old lady, and the kids have to convince her to like trees. So that was kind of her game. And I did just little classroom visits and little appearances with her. And then I lost the puppet.
Aw.
So I was going to and I was planning to have another one built because she was starting to break down, which was a good thing. It was a good thing that she was a little old lady character, because the puppet itself was starting to break down, and so it kind of worked for the character too. But when I lost her, I had already decided I wanted James Whitehall to build a puppet, a replacement for her. Um, and then it kind of evolved in the process to I was using a little kind of a paper bag puppet that I had made. I slapped some leaves on it, and I noticed that on the leaves it said Queen Anne cherry, because it was a little cherry from a cherry tree.
Oh,
And one of the
wow.
kids asked me what my name was, and I was like, well, I don't know. It's well, I'm Queen Anne Cherry. I'm Queen Anne Cherry. Yes, I am. I'm yeah, librarian of the forest. Yeah, that's a ticket. Yeah, so that's how she was born.
Hmm.
So I went to James and I said, I got this new character, Queen Anne Cherry, librarian of the forest, and he redesigned the whole thing and made a completely new puppet.
And that puppet was Mrs. Cherry, right?
And now yeah, she's Queen Anne Cherry, and I kind of simplified it to Ms. Cherry's library.
Mm. Yeah, you sent me a couple of little video clips of those. I thought
Yeah,
those were really cute. And if anyone else is interested, once again, I'll put a link in the corner of the video if you want to see the whole collection. It's
yeah,
really cute. She's just like reading stories to
yeah.
kids basically, and I think that that's really adorable.
There's 6 of them so far.
Mm.
And they're challenging because I'm doing it on my iPhone at home with the best lighting I have, the best equipment that I could come up with in the little corner of my apartment. And then I record the voices over here. I mean, I do all the voices, I do all the editing. And so it's,
Amazing.
you know, a pandemic project, right?
Mm. Mm. You and me both got some of those. I've got
Yeah.
this, and
Uh-huh.
you've got Miss Cherry's library.
Yeah.
You might actually be interested to know that I have a couple of friends that did tree planting in British Columbia.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, my friend Coco, her real name is Courtney, but she's been known as Coco for years. She did tree planting in BC and actually met one of my classmates there. She was doing tree planting in BC as well, and she did a whole project for school on it. So there's
Nice.
something kind of interesting.
Was it part of a larger project?
I think it was like a summer job for them both.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It was like a big initiative to plant trees.
yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Cheryl, thank you very much for joining me for Nostalgia Talk today. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Thank you, James. I think that's it.
Well, to the listeners, stay tuned for next week because I am going to be chatting with another cast member from Sesame Street, Eureka's Castle, Oobi, and Between the Lions, Noel McNeil.
No, I was going to suggest him. Yay!
Well, Noel is going to be coming on here on Thursday, March the 25th. And for some of you listeners out there who are my age, you'd remember him best as Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House. I actually saw a friend of mine today, and he had a friend of his with him. And I said, oh, I'm interviewing Cheryl Blaylock today from Eureka's Castle, and I'm going to be chatting with another Eureka's Castle castmate, Noel McNeil, next week.
He was my Magellan!
Right. Yeah, he's also Magellan the Dragon on Eureka's Castle. And that show had a bunch of other Sesame Street alum. Pam Arciero, Brian Neal, Jim Krupa, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned for next week. Peace.
Thank you.